Hello, my name is Jeremy Sams, and I really enjoy teaching the Bible, especially like looking at the Bible, kind of trying to get in depth a little bit and find some things I've never seen before and then share it with other people. I've been doing short versions and long versions as I've been going through the book of Jeremiah. Specifically today, we're going to do Jeremiah chapter 4, verses 19 to the end of the chapter. So if you want a more detailed version, I have that. This is kind of my quick take on that. So, quick review of where we are. Jeremiah is about 350 years after the time of David, and he's delivering prophecies of doom and judgment coming to the nation. In that last section we looked at specifically, Jeremiah actually gets into some more detail specifically about what's happening. He talks about a lion coming out of the thicket for Judah, metaphorically referring to Babylon because Babylon is associated with a lion. And we just really see some more specificity in the specific kind of stuff that's coming. He alludes to there being a siege of Jerusalem. And he also has a moment where he kind of has almost like a breaking of his heart or a frustration where he's like, God, you've deceived the people. You've not let them see this judgment that's coming upon them. Even though Jeremiah was the one actually warning the people, Jeremiah seems to have some sort of like emotional outburst where he was just frustrated. Anyway, we pick up from there, and what we see in this section is God and Jeremiah both kind of expressing their grief over the situation that's coming. In verse 19 it says, my anguish, I writhe in pain. Oh, the walls of my heart is beating wildly. I cannot keep silent, for I hear the sound of the trumpet, the alarm of war. Crash follows hard on crash. The whole land is laid waste. Suddenly my tents are laid waste, my curtains in a moment. How long must I see the standard and hear the sound of the trumpet? So here we see Jeremiah speaking, and it starts off, my anguish, I writhe in pain, all of the walls of my heart. Those words that are here, my anguish, are actually, if you look at some more literal translations, are actually my bowels, because back in the ancient days, that's kind of where they pictured people's emotions being seated, like we might talk about our heart or our mind, but he's saying my bowels or my anguish, almost like he's so upset it's giving him a stomach ache. Oh, the walls of my heart is beating wildly, I cannot keep silent. He's just nearly having a panic attack about how upset he is. I cannot keep silent, for I hear the sound of trumpet, the alarm of war. Sound of trumpet, what we, in ancient times, they would use trumpets to communicate over long distances, especially if they're trying to lead troops. You know, you need some signal so they all know when to move. Well, you do the trumpet to kind of give people that information. So he's saying he's hearing that, and he can't keep silent about what's happening, how he feels, and how upset he is, which is something we see echoed from Jeremiah later about how he can't keep God's words locked up in his heart, even if he wanted to. He can't. Crash follows hard on crash. The whole land is laid waste. That word crash is a little bit of a weird word to use. I think most translations, ESV is what I'm using right now, and it's the only one that translates that as crash. Most translate that more akin to destruction. It most literally means like the word of the idea of like a fracture or something, but the idea is kind of destruction upon destruction. Crash follows hard on crash. The whole land is laid waste. Suddenly my tents are laid waste, my curtains in a moment. And this is kind of weird, like why are we talking about tents? I don't know much about how they lived at the time, but you would think they've been, in Jerusalem or in the land of Judah for a long time. They should have built some more permanent structures. So I've looked up some different takes on that. Nobody's exactly sure what this is referring to. My best guess, if I had to make one, and some people have speculated this, is it's the idea of how frail their structure is in comparison to what's attacking them. It's like a tent is no defense, right? It'd just be laid waste immediately, and that's what might be what they're alluding to here. Suddenly my tents are laid waste, my curtains in a moment. How long must I see the standard and hear the sound of the trumpet? So, he's thinking about the Babylonian Empire invading, seeing their standard, which is like their flag, their symbol, which would be brought to campaigns of war, their trumpet, which of course again is associated with the military. He's like, ugh. Even though it hasn't happened yet, he's like envisioning it and just upset about it. For the people are foolish, this is verse 22, they know me not. They are stupid children, they have no understanding. They are wise in doing evil, but how to do good they know not. If you ever needed a life verse, something to base your life around, any of you who are parents, you might be able to take this. My people are foolish, they know me not. They are stupid children, they have no understanding. But this is a sad verse. I mean, to think of having to say this about your children, they have no idea how to be good. They only know how to do bad. And I think there's a little bit of a lesson here we can take of they are wise in doing evil, but how to do good they know not. I think Paul at one point says, I would have you be kind of ignorant about evil and to learn more about wisdom. There's something there, and I don't think we spend a lot of time just thinking about how to be good. That's not something we tend to dwell on a lot, perhaps because we think of our own nature and our own ability to be good as, we give ourselves too much esteem in that area, I suspect, sometimes. Moving on, verses 23 through 26. So we're trading off at first with Jeremiah talking about being upset by the trumpet. Here, then we switch to God talking about my children don't know anything. Here we seem to be switching back to Jeremiah in this section. I looked on the earth, and behold, it was without form and void, and to the heavens, and they had no light. I looked on the mountains, and behold, they were quaking, and all the hills moved to and fro. I looked, and behold, there was no man, and all the birds of the air had fled. I looked, and behold, the fruitful land was a desert, and all its cities were laid in ruins before the Lord, before his fierce anger. I probably should say, I've done so many of these videos, I forget to say it every time, but Jeremiah speaks largely in metaphors. He kind of paints a picture, and then we kind of have to figure out what he's talking about here. So this is an interesting one, a really interesting one. I looked on earth, and behold, it was without form and void. Does that ring a bell for you? It should, because Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:2, let's see if I can do it from memory, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Without form and void, we see that exact phrase used again. And this exact phrase is used only twice in the Bible, one in Genesis 1:2, and the other time here in Jeremiah. So that cannot be a coincidence that they just randomly, it's not, I don't think there's any chance that was a random choice of words. Jeremiah and God are intentionally bringing back that idea of the earth before God created it, before he made it into what it is today. It was without form and void, and I looked at the earth, and behold, it was without form and void, and to the heavens, and remember, what did God create? The heavens and the earth. So we're echoing those ideas. And the heavens, they had no light. What was the first thing God created? We said created light and darkness, right? So this is very intentionally echoing that. I looked on the mountains, and behold, they were quaking, and the hills moved to and fro. So he's working on different levels here. As far as, I think most of this is still allusion back to Genesis 1 and 2, the creation. I looked up the mountains. Well, the Bible, I don't think that the creation mentions mountains necessarily, but it's talking about, separating the land and the water, which is basically raising one part of the land and putting down another part of the land, right? We know how water works. So it is kind of like creating mountains there. And they're quaking and moving around. Kind of probably just speaking about like this earth-shattering level of this event. Which, by the way, if the mountains are moving, then everything's shaking, right? So it kind of makes a metaphorical sense of, everything is unstable right now. I looked, and behold, there was no man, and all the birds of the air had fled. So here we get, again, these seem to be things that were created in, obviously everything was created in creation, but there being no man, there being no birds of the air, it seems to be going back through that. I looked, and behold, the fruitful land was a desert. Well, clearly we know God put them in Adam and Eve in Garden of Eden, right? A place of growth and prosperity. And God's now saying, hey, that's going to become a desert. So it's like, I think what God and Jeremiah are saying here is like all of creation, all the blessings of God, all the generosity of God, all these wonderful things that have been given to mankind, I'm taking it away. You've wasted it. You've turned against me. All those blessings are going away. It's like the decreating as a judgment. Of course, not completely literally, because it's not like the universe ended, but being used metaphorically. And I looked, and behold, the fruitful land was a desert, and all its cities were laid in ruins. The cities things is the only thing that doesn't really fit with the Genesis 1 idea, because it doesn't really mention cities there. I think Genesis 1 and 2, I haven't looked at it in a little while. But there aren't cities mentioned there, but I think maybe this is Jeremiah kind of bringing it down to more concrete level. It's like, if you don't get what I'm saying with all these allusions to creation, I'm talking about destruction is coming to your city. It kind of makes it a little bit more real at the end. I looked, and behold, the fruitful land was a desert, and all its cities were laid in ruins before the Lord, before his fierce anger. 27:28, for thus says the Lord, the whole land shall be a desolation, yet I will not make a full end. For the earth shall mourn, and the heavens shall be dark. For I have spoken, and I have purposed. I have not relented, nor will I turn back. So again, the Lord is talking this time. And he's saying, I'm not going to turn back. Judgment is coming. Now, here, the very next passage, very next section we're going to read mentions, get yourself right, repent, so you can be spared this judgment. So I'm not sure God is actually saying that judgment is 100% locked in at this point. There's different ways of looking at it because, of course, God sees outside of time. But in a temporal sense, I think if Judah had repented at this point, probably they could have avoided judgment. But I think what he's saying more is by the time you get to this point where the army is invading, that's past the point. I have not turned away. I'm coming for you. We get that line in 27, yet the whole land shall be a desolation, yet I will not make a full end. And this is actually a callback to something in Leviticus and in the Mosaic Law where all of this is predicted. He says, you guys are not going to follow me, you're going to turn away, and in those days, if you do those things, I will still save a remnant of you, I will keep a piece of you, I will not make a full end of you. So this is something that's echoed over and over and over again. If you're at my church right now, Pastor Mark, if you attend Creekside, then Pastor Mark is, talking about that idea of the remnant being a theme that he discusses. So that's echoed very much here. Go ahead and finish up the passage. Switching back to Jeremiah for the last section. At the noise of the horseman and archer, every city takes to flight. They enter thickets, they climb among rocks. All the cities are forsaken, and no man dwells in them. And you, O desolate one, what do you mean that you dress in scarlet, that you adorn yourself with ornaments of gold, that you enlarge your eyes with paint? In vain you beautify yourself. Your lovers despise you. They seek your life. For I've heard a cry as of a woman in labor, anguish as of one giving birth to her first child. The cry of the daughter of Zion, gasping for breath, stretching out her hands. Woe is me, I am fainting before murderers. At the noise of horsemen, horseman and archer, every city takes to flight. So horseman and archer are big weapons of war at the time. These are very powerful forces on the battlefield. Every city takes to flight. So God said in the last section, flee to the cities. Now he's saying, run from the cities. You don't even have that as a refuge anymore. They enter thickets and they climb among rocks. You're just in harsh conditions trying to survive amongst nature. All the cities are forsaken. No man dwells in them. And you, O desolate one, what do you mean that you dress in scarlet, that you adorn yourself with ornaments of gold, that you enlarge your eyes with paint? So these sorts of things of dressing in scarlet, I think, is the key thing there. That's the signification of being a whore. If I'm not mistaken, the whores would generally wear scarlet clothing to kind of indicate their craft. So he's saying you're being invaded, you're being taken over, and it's like rather than trying to take refuge from these people who come to seek your life, it's like you're trying to have sex with them, you're trying to seduce them, you're still trying to woo them, and whether that is because you still want them or you're just trying to whore yourself out to get out of judgment. Either way, you're being so foolish, you're being ridiculous. What are you thinking? It seems to be what's communicated here. In vain you beautify yourself. Your lovers despise you. They seek your life. It reminds me of destructive romantic relationships. You think it's love, but it's hate, closer to hate anyway. For I heard a cry as of a woman in labor, anguish as one giving birth to her first child, the cry of the daughter of Zion, gasping for breath, stretching out her hands. Woe is me, for I am fainting before murderers. This horrible verse, the daughter of Zion, is a weird phrase, but it actually seems to be, from what I can tell trying to look it up, daughter of Zion is, even though a strange way of talking about it, is actually kind of talking about Jerusalem, because Zion is associated with Jerusalem. Jerusalem as being like a metaphorical daughter of God. So daughter of Zion, but it's actually kind of like saying my daughter Jerusalem, my daughter Judah. It's God saying, this is my daughter in this situation, in all this pain, gasping for breath. Like a woman in travail, I'm fainting before murders. It's a horrible thing. So what do we get from all this? On some levels, there's some things that are interesting about like the Genesis 1 allusion, but on some level, it's pretty straightforward. So what do you make of it? I think the main thing I get is that God is, that they're grieving. Jeremiah and God seem to be in a state of grief, and grief is good. We don't think of it in terms of being good, but I think we probably more specifically in the Western world, in the United States, we are so wonderfully blessed. We have so many resources. I think we become addicted to the idea of we need to feel good all the time. And when bad feelings happen, maybe we turn to drugs or pornography or destructive relationships, alcohol, something to like soothe the pain, or even maybe something more neutral, like just getting lost in TV or, frivolities. But we actually should be grieving. This is what Jeremiah and God are both doing. Jesus wept, and there's something healthy in that, and there's something destructive in not taking the time to grieve when bad things happen. So yeah, I think we see that in the midst of all this judgment, God and Jeremiah were grieving, and I think there's a lesson in there for us worth considering. All right, anyway, that's about it. I'll hopefully catch you on the next one, and have a wonderful day.